Hi, welcome to the Helen Plum Board of Trustees meeting for January 21st, 2025. At 7 p.m. in the conference room. The meeting is called to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation.
Alison Foot,
Here.
Sue Wiggins, Kristen Cosmo-Studwall, here, Julie Kowalski-Smith, here, Jennifer Erickson, Ginger Kearney,
Here.
Kelly Sims.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
It's just like when the waiter comes in after your meeting.
100%.
I just wanted to let everybody know that I am still actively seeking a position on the board. I'm looking to join you guys, so I'm very interested.
Thank you for being here.
And you guys are doing great.
Appreciate it. Okay, any other comment? That seeing none, may I have a motion for adoption of the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda as it stands.
And okay, all in favor, say aye. Okay. Motion for the next action item.
I move for approval of the consent agenda items.
I second.
Okay, any discussion for these? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda items? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries as well. Okay, on to committee and foundation reports, audit committee.
Oh, did that.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. All right, director relations committee would be Jen. Did any other members? Okay, all right, policy and bylaws.
We met last Wednesday on the 15th, and we'll be looking at a couple policies to review tonight.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, and then an update for the Helen Plum Library Foundation.
Yes, the foundation is working on having a larger presence online. So if you have a moment, take a look at some of the Facebook posts that are there or Instagram, whichever you prefer. And there will be some additional fundraising that will happen later in the spring. Most of those will be small events like a Culver's night, things like that. And as those become, when the information becomes available, I'll let everyone know. Okay.
Thanks, Ginger. Okay, any unfinished business that, no, all right, moving on. Okay, on to our new business items. Joe, good to see you.
Good to see you.
We need a motion for that first? For the presentation, no, right? Okay.
There's no action.
Let's see if I can mess this up. I'm good to go. Talk a little bit about the report. The motivation is slowly to take good care of the communities that are in this facility. So there are wonderful, they're working well, they can become quite problematic and they're taken care of. We've done a couple presentations on this. Proper care feeding of your building. Buildings can take a lot of attention, and if they need both, is money. So the idea is to think ahead and identify the portions of the building that are likely to wear out. That's just those pieces of building that are likely to have a very long lifespan, and to anticipate the need repairs or replacements in a logical sequence that really ties to the actual wear and tear of those pieces of equipment. The happy news is most things tend to last pretty significant time periods. The things that are most likely to wear really the significant investments are sealants from the exterior building. None of this is glamorous, and there's nothing less glamorous than building sealants, but those have lifespans about 8 to 10 years. And it's really important that those unglamorous things are really tended to. When air, water, vapor get into the building, it's really problematic. That's when deterioration really accelerates. That's when things start to grow and live inside your walls. And that's when people really get uncomfortable for reasons. So it isn't glamorous, but it's probably the best thing that you can do for the long-term health of your building and its occupants. After that, it's to be longer we're talking mechanical equipment that tends to last 20 to 25 years. Roof membranes tend to be the same. Masonry, the mortar comes to the first things that tend to go out, that's gonna be 25 to 40 years. The masonry itself could be good for, 100 years, as long as you can keep those deleterious materials like water and getting in behind the brick, you'll be doing well. So the happy news is you're at the beginning of that long span of potential expenses, which means that incrementally you can start to build a reserve fund that will allow you to address those when the time comes. So the point of the report is to be fairly systematic and address those.
Point this way, right?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Oh, is it not,
Yeah, closer.
is it not clicking?
No, but there we go. Table of contents. This gives you some idea of the right hand side of the very building system. Try to be pretty thorough, get to the things that are, not really considered capital expense, like paint, that's considered, maintenance. But we want to acknowledge that if you have to paint the whole building, that can really add up. More likely, you're gonna paint things as they get a little warm, a little itchy, things of that nature. But for the most part, these are pretty, expensive items to maintain and repair. So we wanted to look at that in a series of incremental, assessments. If you go to the next one, let's see, try it again. Try again.
Yeah.
There we go. Right. So, as I mentioned, we want to understand the condition of the building. We went through and identified the likely lifespan of each of the elements. Because we're so early in the building's life, everything is pretty much tracking as one would expect. It's important to repeat this exercise periodically. We're still early, so you maybe 5 years out. As you start getting closer to some of those anticipated end of life replacements, you want to start doing more frequent inspections. I would highly encourage you to have an annual roof inspection done, have a service contract with mechanical, fire protection, plumbing contractors to do inspections on pieces of equipment. Forewarnings, forearms, all of those sorts of things are really new against the buildings. The idea is if we could think about lifespan, think about what it would cost to replace it today, try and anticipate the value of money when those things were out. We can give you a target for how much money you can set aside. When we filter this through the program, there's a couple of things that really come up. One is anything related to life safety, the well-being of building occupants. So we can call that level one, which is code-related items on life safety. And those are priority one repairs. There's a few things in there that show up. Annual testing, you can see couple $1,000 each year. There's a number of systems that really do need to be tested pretty regularly. There's a few things that are less critical, but are worth testing. And now lighting control, touchscreen interfaces seem to be a little bit problematic. And so making sure that that's taken care of would be a good thing to do. When we think about breaking the potential expenses down into groups, we wanted to identify not only priority, but the order of magnitude. So the next page starts to get into, is it truly a capital repair? I think those things that various levels of government define differently. And for us, we settled on if it takes 10 years for something to work, or if it costs more than $10,000 to replace, it was considered a capital expense. Everything else may fall into major maintenance or routine maintenance. We scheduled a lot of major maintenance in here, things that didn't cost $10,000 or might last less than 10 years, because you do want to be aware of it. So there's a way to filter out those things that don't meet someone's particular definition of a capital repair. And that's something that the Excel sheet lets you adjust. So if the board adopts a policy that's different from those, if you apply for a state grant to address some things and they want to know lifespan, this will give you the data that you need based on those filters. So we did separate capital improvements from routine maintenance. And again, the first few items that come up on that list, we wanted to So to get in a routine of thinking about what might be coming up. And again, they're relatively focused on maintaining affordability. The overall summary gives you a snapshot looking forward. And as I mentioned, category one, life safety, that's the highest first priority. There's a few things that come right after that, and sort of keeping water in the building is our number two priority. We call that building enclosure, so things like roof, windows, sealants. If you do see any deterioration of the brick or the board, those are all things that we really want to make sure the building is in good order. Keep water out, keep vapor out, keep heat in or cool in, depending on the season. So that's category two. System integrity are all the things that sort of make the building habitable. Plumbing systems, HVAC, electrical power distribution. There's a few things that sort of jump out. Fire protection is considered more life safety because it protects occupants in the event of that kind of calamity. Things like restroom faucets, not so much. Water service coming in, yeah, you can't be drinking contaminated water. So there's a few instances where an entire category doesn't fit in one of the priorities. But the idea is to look at those really big, expensive systems and identify a strategy for it. Library functionality, we all want to acknowledge that library service continues to evolve and the expectations of the building. The standards it needs to meet in order to support you in your efforts continue to change. So this is much more adaptable facility than you came from. But over time, there's going to be things that just don't fit how service is delivered. The fact that we've done a lot of burn-based solutions rather than a lot of built-in cats and plates. I think it was one of the south suburbs, Tinley Park had a cast in place throughout the card catalog at one point. So not only wasn't it mobile, they knew exactly how many library books they would own, and that's how many slots they had in the card catalog. We tried to eliminate all of them. So you're in a position where you're much more likely to be able to adapt to changing circumstances that buildings built, 10, 20, certainly 30 years ago. So we did want to know that some things that will, primarily public service points, that we wanted to identify in that category. Right now, aesthetics shouldn't be too much of an issue. You did mention some things and that sort of thing. It's important to address those early. People respect a well-maintained, elegant building. Buildings that show signs of neglect or, yeah, we'll get to that next year. It invites more sort of abuse, so keeping it tuned and fresh. At some point, things like carpets start to look a little, not quite as bright, and then they look a little dingy and then a little threadbare, and then you start tripping. So things like carpet can move from that little bit of dingy, which would be aesthetic, to, yeah, now it's actually a tripping hazard, and that's okay. So over time, some of these items can slide between categories. As you notice things like that, try to keep this in tune and move things up in terms of priority on the list. I think that will help you get that off issues down the road. Now you have all of that in a category. It's hard to think about these because, especially after your first round of repair, these things are going to bounce around based on when things get repaired. And it's easier to manage, but think a concept of one of the good times for inconvenience the public, a major recarpeting, a major repainting. What happens if they have to take an air and what kind of redundancy do we have? Hopefully you're not replacing the condensing unit in the middle of it, but those sorts of things. So trying to be anticipatory and allocate funds in, this reminds me of old Soviet era planning in 5-year windows. And the idea is to manage the ups and downs in a way that is a little bit more easy to conceptualize. So depending on your interest in either category, year, or building system, the Excel program really lets you parse this out and filter down to areas that might be of particular interest. And in terms of pragmatics, you've got that annual contract coming in to look at your plumbing. You just hit, tell me all about the plumbing. Tell me about plumbing on the second floor. Tell me about plumbing in the public zone on the second floor. It really lets you sit all day about a lot of things. Here's. And your life expectancy at 10,000. You go and change these and it really filters all that information. The report, does filter capital reserves, capital reserve for you, as opposed to the composite. And then maintenance is a separate category. Some people like word, some people like numbers, some people like graphs. So the report has all three. And as you see here, you should expect a little bit of things to start to occur. Yeah, 10 years down the road, I think this is our seals. But for the most part, you're looking forward to those 10-year kind of investments. Scary graph, in all likelihood, some things are gonna have a life that exceeds this nominal expectation at this point. Right now, we are talking basically on whatever the data suggests. The observations are, it's still looking pretty good. Some of these things you can start to plan ahead. So we don't want to spend that kind of money all in 1 year. The other thing that will factor into this is something like your mechanical system, huge investment. It doesn't all fail. Some of these things never fail. The air handling has a metallic shell and there's fans and pumps and filters. Those individual pieces get replaced over time. And they fail at different times. So this is a little scarier graphically than it is in real life. Over the course of that 5-year window, you will need to have access to something close to this amount of money. The other thing that should soften this is that is the value of the repair 20 years from now. So there is 20 years of escalation at 3.5% per year. So in today's money, and you can filter the data this way too, it's a much smaller number. So that's soothing. The big message, and I think you know this is why you commissioned the study, is to start saving money early. Here's that broken down and into the 5-year windows, and you can see psychologically, in terms of advance, it helps. Still the same for the implication for escalation. The other thing that's important to note is that certain systems are more expensive. HVAC is one of them. Sorry. So we look at line 16, for example. That is our, that's our protection. But the categories of expense that are going to be more significant over time. And the narrative helps break that down. The other one we want to look at was life safety, building closure, system integrity, and where your expenses are going in the first few years. So this is our first 5-year window. You see most of these are taking care of the chemicals, replacing filters, tuning pumps, checking the light control system. There's no life safety issue that is building closure should be good for fire. We don't even state functionality challenge. And you get to decide really when it's looking a little fishy. Painting schedule is rated by the library. Some libraries paint every 3 years, some every 10 years. No one really paints the whole building all at once. It shouldn't get a lot of here. It's children's. So the data allows you to filter that way. Do you want to point out that escalation is probably one of the biggest limitations we have? These projections over time, which give you targets for the savings, are a one-time decision in the spreadsheet. So I can't put in sort of expecting net inflation for 3 years, that'll find out on, now we got a level period. It's just a flat 3% compounded each and every year. So recently you seesaw from 8 to 2, back to 4. So it's a good average over the past 20-25 years. Longer, I mean, it's too long. It has averaged somewhere between 3 and 4%, which tends to be a little bit lower than general inflation, but that's construction, energy intensive, skilled labor intensive. And that's reflected in the escalations. There's a whole bunch more that you will get to read for the follow through this. The goal here is to let you sort of see that if questions come up, let us know. Because it is an interactive tool, it's important to understand. Excel sheet actually updates this report fairly thoroughly. So as we do those updates, you can get used to that in this kind of format. But the idea is to tweak it to match your experience in the building. And then plan accordingly. It's really a planning tool, not a report that sits on the shelf. So, but there's people that hate Excel, and people that love it. Did you see that there was an Excel sort of competition? Yeah. Yeah. Are there questions on intent or content?
There is a larger document that goes with this and also the Excel spreadsheet. I will share that with you guys with the caveat of anytime you have questions, please just communicate them. It is a large document and it's a lot to sift through. And you mentioned it's not static, it's what's the work we're putting into the building, what is it costing us year to year? And then looking at it at your recommendation in 5 years to say, hey, is this still where the projections are going? So we can keep our finger on that pulse. Yeah, I think it's good to go into these things with our eyes as open as possible, even if it's a little blurry to start. So take your time reading through it. We'll share the digital copies of both of these. I do have a hard copy here. We'll have some hard copies in the building. But the Excel is where it gets a little, I think, really kind of fun.
Yeah.
Because it's like the what ifs kind of go in that. They're projected in there. So thank you so much.
Mostly directed to Anne, thank you, Commissioner. As you've had a chance to sit through it and talk to Bill about it, have you thought, here's what I'm going to suggest to the board that we begin to set aside, because
So I don't have that figured out, to be honest. I'm looking at the year to year, I'm looking at what it's costing us this year. For the minor repairs, but I think really taking a longer look and letting that marinate. So we have a good plan to the next working budget, that's much good for this.
and do we have, I know we have reserve, so will some of, let's say we wanted in 2025 to make some kind of deposit towards this
Yes.
as we'll need.
So we have a special reserves budget. This is going to speak to how and why we use that budget. So when Joe taxpayer comes with a question of why are you saving X year to year, we can say, okay, because eventually the ceilings are gonna fail. And that's not a very attractive project, but it needs to be repaired because otherwise we.
The masonry needs to be sealed on
We end up like we have full spaces, so, that this is really to help support the long-term planning. And it's interesting because we're gonna go through the per capita grant summary, which kind of speaks to some of the, are you doing these annual building checks? This goes further.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so.
Was this one of the documents that you looked at when making the decision about recommendation for the levy and whatnot?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But, and then most of our building warranties, are they 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, some of them are even up to 5, but.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got a big binder of those too.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
You as well. Thank you. Thank you. Gotta get sued a lot. Walk me off.
Okay,
It is,
yeah, any further discussion, is that,
I-
is still on?
I would just say it is a lot to sift through. We're gonna send out the Excel file, we'll send out the PDF, the PDF gets. Kind of feeds into the PDF, and you'll start to see it a bit broader. But it can be kind of fun to go through, so take your time once we send it out. I just wanted something of an overview when we're looking at the definitions of the terms that they apply, which are not always in our vernacular, so it's like nice to hear it from Joe first, but if there's any questions, just send them, because it's part of the process is understanding what it is, so.
Right. Because with the insurance for years. And
Yeah.
one of the things you're supposed to do is put money in reserves because eventually stuff has to be replaced, you know? And we were in a panic in the other one, you recall, we were worried about that HVAC failing after 50 years.
Yeah.
And what were we gonna do if it failed before we got this? So knowing that we have a plan going forward, just sort of.
Yes.
Already.
Agreed.
I guess that's my biggest thing is how do we dovetail this, with, like the budget,
Yeah, so,
what the buckets of money are.
so there was one key figure on there that was, almost $600,000.
Yeah.
Which is like, what's the average cost over this period that you need to kind of, what's the nut, right? So that's what's in the back of my mind of what we're saving. And when you think about what we transferred to special reserves last year, we will be able to handle that with our budget. There may be years in which we have opportunities to save additional funds and then we just target it towards this plan. But I think the transparency to the public to just say, we never wanted to. Yeah, here's how we could do this with the funds that we are currently receiving and those incremental levy increases over the year as opposed to a larger one.
And I love that. It was probably here the community's investment because.
Yeah.
We're not gonna do this.
Yeah.
I mean, and we shouldn't need it.
Well,
If we take care of what we have.
acknowledges that this is a privilege and taking it seriously, so it's. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Megan.
Yeah, so it's going into the working budget, it's going to the overall plan, but the big key is updating that special reserves ordinance.
Yeah.
And then looking at the building condition again in a broader detail like they did for this project every 5 years, so that if there is something that's overlooked in the annual inspections that were, some of the inspections are quarterly, that we participate in to make sure that there's nothing overlooked, that the plumbing is in good tact, the ceiling's in good tact, because getting those big walkthroughs with engineers and specialists gets us the information we need, so we're making informed budgeting decisions year to year.
Ideally, I'd love to see whatever the amount is that we feel like we need to project for
Yeah.
that first 5 year. You know, for us to, it'll be in the budget, we'll know what it is, it'll be one of the items, and at the end of that 5 years, we'll funds to say, it's time to tackle this, just because
Right,
it makes the place look the way it's.
well, it's the gum on the floor, right? If there's one thing of gum on the floor. So, by the way, Phil and his crew do have a method for getting gum off of just about every surface, so. In case there were concerns.
In any case, okay, so on to, I will do business item B, in 2024 per capita grant. So.
I just appreciate sometimes the way these things dovetail into each other. So the per capita summary is something we look at every year, where we're going through checklists from the state to say, are we doing what we should be doing? This year we have two highlight colors, one is yellow and one is green. I hope you've had a chance to go through and look at the additions for 2024. Most of the content is directly from serving the public. Serving our public, sorry, I was getting stuck there, I'm like, that's not what it's called. But the content in yellow and green is what we've added, so there are a few things that we are still working towards, but overall, I think we're hitting a lot of our targets with regularity in a way that we weren't able to do years ago, so kudos. Do you want to go through some of the highlights I have on page 4 of the summary, page 44 of the overall report? The library board reviews library policies on a regular basis. I do think we're hitting a better target here. There is always work to be done on policies, but we're getting back on track. We did review 20% of our policies. I thought that was a decent number. I want to get to 25 to 30, but man. That's a good amount. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Structure for this facility. So
Yes.
Well, there's been a lot of updates to laws.
Yeah. Yeah, the ones that were updated were the ones that needed to be updated, either because of the building or because of laws, so we took care of those first.
Yeah.
There's a few others in there,
Yeah.
but you know.
Yeah.
But, speaking to the orientation program for new board members, I did note that you completed a self-evaluation this year. But I do want to reiterate that there are plans in place for creating a better sharing tool for information for board trustees. So once that is developed, it'll be something that I'll meet with you guys on to just say, here's how you can find information on the things that you requested more information on. So that's on my radar. The session planning always needs work, but we do now have assistant managers for the patron facing managers. We also have our an assistant director. Thank you very much for being here to help us as backup, but there's continued session documentation will be ongoing, but it's improving year to year. So thank goodness. The capital projects checklists for what I was referring to earlier. And then we have not shared our emergency manual in full to community safety personnel. It's kind of an interesting thing. I think we need to remove maybe some content from our emergency manual because it does have some more nuanced procedural things in there. So really, I want to isolate it to be like emergency versus employee procedures before we share it out, because otherwise it's like way too much information. And maybe not particularly useful to people outside of the organization. So that's on our radar. We have asked them to review some key safety procedures, including Code Adam, which there were key updates to based on the recommendations, so. It's really nice to not see a lot of green in this. On page 59 of the overall board packet, page 19 of the summary, the internet acceptable use policy is reviewed annually. We have not done an official review of this, so we'll get that on the list of things to review this year. Okay. Any questions about the per capita grant summary? Great, I'll submit that later this.
All right, action item C, so we're gonna review approval of the updated policies. This. Let's see, policy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, so we looked at both these policies and are recommending them for approval. We had a really good discussion about, and I think the summary to provide is very helpful, like why that you're going through this, and it just, makes sense, the updates.
Okay. We need a vote on those, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or any discussion on?
For approval.
Can I have a motion for approval of the updated policies?
I move that we approve the updated policy B22, B27. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thanks so much. All right, on to our discussion of Rich Lowe. Thank you.
I got the notification that a local artist, Rich Lowe, who was born in Hong Kong and raised in Chinatown, had been awarded the ability to create art to go with the Hokusai exhibit at College of DuPage. Hokusai is the Great Wave, the Japanese picture, Great Wave. Ukiyo-e is the style of artwork, and it is a print art where each layer of color is a different print, so they're layered on top of each other. So the black outline and then the blue and then the black solid colors are all separate pieces that are printed on top of each other. And Rich Lowe is going to create a ukiyo-e style of art for any group in DuPage County that would like to purchase his art. It is $250. And the library is going to have this done. It can be either, and we have a couple of ideas.
Yeah, so the concept is that the artwork is something that the library can use to reprint on bags or it would be a file that we own. And it's part of the larger COD summer art project, like they did Frida previously and the Omegas last summer. Where it's trying to provide open access to art to the public. So this would be a way that we can participate more meaningfully.
Could you scroll?
So some examples.
These are some of the examples of other pieces of this type of art that he has done. So the bridge, go ahead. Yes, exactly. So different historical places or pieces of art that people would recognize. So either the building itself could be the recreation, or which we all know everyone was incredibly interested in and attached to. And we had that as a design done in this style of art. When we had the ability to recreate this, we could put it on bags, coffee mugs, whatever we wanted, and we own the rights to this piece of art. When the piece of art is created, it will be displayed in the building as a vinyl piece, so on a large window, and it would be determined within the marketing department with Rich Lowe. So he would come decide where it's gonna go and then create the piece.
Yeah, I think we've not really had the opportunity to necessarily partner as deeply as we wanted to on these COD exhibit. We did briefly consider whether or not we could fit an Omega on that's but the scale was also with very large concrete structures.
Yeah, big stones.
They were so cool, and they really needed to be in nature, and we're like, our plantings haven't grown enough yet for these Omega. But something from an author and artist, speaking to this art style. Yeah.
I love the idea of the little girl, but
Well, part of the idea is you choose, so this would be part of the marketing department talking to Mr. Lowe about what season it would be in. So there would be design either in front or behind to create some color if we use the little girl, because she is only.
yes,
Well, again, that would be something that could be part of it. Is the summer season. Yes.
look, it has to be like.
So maybe spring is the season.
Yeah, spring might be the season for it, and that could be incorporated as part of that piece. And with the style of artwork that UPOA, those flowers and things would really, yeah, I would say, just like the cherry blossoms in the corner. So, that's a possibility that would be really, really neat.
Yeah, that would be, okay, I'm excited about it.
And thoughts or feedback on vantage points or.
No, I like the idea of part of, just not having the building set and transition didn't allow us to do that, but I like the idea of being a part of the COD.
Yeah.
Been really cool for the community.
One of the things that COD does is it will create a book, and each place that has one of these artworks will have a stamp, so people will get stamps.
Oh,
yes. Yes, so they'll get business. Yeah. And then there's some sort of little prize they get when they fill their book with each of the stamps, as well as they get to keep their little book with that memory. But that encourages people to travel to the different areas around. The Almac had it was a chocolate that was in one of the stones.
That.
I know, but you had to get every single stone, and it was the chocolate shop in Glen Ellen that created these.
Stamps?
Yes. I know. I was very upset when I found that out. I was like, oh, really? Because you got this chunk of chocolate.
What an opportunity for the library to participate in this effort.
And then the ability to use it for other things in the future in different ways.
That's a
We could do
great-
t-shirts, we could do sweatshirts, this could be so much fun and I'm just incredibly excited. And we do have Richlow books in our collection downstairs.
Oh, cool.
So, and he has a very specific style of art for some of his children's work that's very different from this.
Really?
Yeah. So, and he's also just a very, very lovely man. I've met him a few times at a couple of different exhibits. So,
Well, I can't wait to see what gets created.
yes.
So who decides what image we're using and when is that decided?
It will be decided in the next 2 weeks and kind
The
of the
deadline
marketing.
is coming. So if you had ideas, feel free to share. We were thinking either the view from Main Street, because that southwest corner is pretty awesome, but I know that we say this with all seriousness, the number one question when we moved to the building was, when will the little girl get here? So that might have an impact locally.
Mhm.
But I would like marketing to have some say, and to have some influence on this, because they will know the application for what we can use this going
Yes.
forward. I do like the concept of having it featured in the spring so that we can have that accent, because I think that would be a missed opportunity to not, yeah. I do too.
Well, and there's nothing that says we can't move the little girl to that, it doesn't.
Yeah, creatively, it's possible. So
Yeah.
we'll see what.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be exact. We can have creative.
Right,
license.
art. So-
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Okay, moving on to communications.
Yes.
I did not receive.
We had a couple thank yous from the community drive. One was from the Lombard Citizens Police Academy in reference to the Shop with the Cop program, and they did include a lovely photo, so I'll pass that around. This is a photo copy. Another was from the village president in regard to the blood drive that we hosted. There's 24 units of life-saving blood, ultimately helping to save up to 72 lives. So it's really great that we're able to keep offering those. And then we also had a message. Sorry. Honor question. We were able to donate 284 pounds of food to the College of DuPage Fuel Pantry. So we had a letter of gratitude from them as well. So I would have food to that and that feed on.
Okay, the next item is the executive director's report.
No, I don't have anything. I think the 2 months of library activity is funny.
Yeah.
I do want to ask that if you guys have questions, I know we're gonna get to the library activity report coming up. But we are trying a new format, trying to make it a little easier to read quickly. I know that this is 2 months of content. So when you consider that and see how many pages it is, it's actually a reduction overall. We're trying to make sure that we're including things that are meaningful and then having to share it in a way where we can see the project as a whole. So when we're talking about programs, we want to talk about all the programs. We're talking about efforts to improve our catalog. We try to concentrate that in one section, so it's not kind of sprinkled throughout. Just again, emphasizing that we are a single organization working together towards goals and not individual departments.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do too.
Thanks, there was effort. I think that Tyler started just in time. I'm like, am I insane? Does this make sense? And some of it really didn't, so thank you.
Well, hopefully to you, that sort of as far, or feel less like reporting. I've been studying this.
Yeah.
And more the outcome of you delivering. to,
Yeah.
You know.
What's the point of all of this? What's the story trying to tell? So I think we need a time to just look at what we're reporting and then shift the thinking. So this is gonna keep getting tweaked month to month. I do think it'll be easier to share with the public to have it more plainly presented. Because departments don't mean a lot to the average patron. So, all right, that's it for director's report.
Although, that, will you still have a different is notes from the executive director, is that going to be your executive director report for the board meeting as well?
Yeah, and for the director's report section, usually I have a couple additional comments. I had plenty to say here, so I didn't
Yeah.
want to speak too much.
Of course.
But I think we'll have notes at the top of the executive director for any sort of long-term projects that are specific to the work that we're doing
Yeah.
and the board. But otherwise, a lot of the work we do, like I said, is collaborative, so I want to make sure that we're presenting the library's work and not presenting it as though it's the executive director doing all the things. So, yeah. But
The
if
only thing I think could get lost, and this is actually just something about,
thank you.
like if there's. It probably would just fall under somewhere else. Like if you and Tyler, met with Sewing the Village to discuss whatever projects, you know, and I'm sure that'll show up somewhere.
Yeah,
So I would maybe just,
be mindful of that.
that's something to do, but it's not to say that it sounded to me like I was totally.
No, I like mindfulness. I think part of it too is when we're recording the planning meetings, at a certain point, it's. I'm gonna try not to get too long on this explanation. When we're only talking about planning, and then by the time we actually get to the thing, what's more interesting? Right? Do we need to hear about it for 3 months before it's launched versus here's the thing? And we got there. Particularly when I'm thinking about the perspective of the public. Because we all know that there's a lot of meetings and a lot of activity before getting to a end goal. So I think even in just the way. As we're seeing this evolve, I think being clear in our communication in terms of. With the culture, I just want to call it culture code. With the library culture document and the team that worked on that. Giving that background for how the process started, because it was from March of 2024 until December. So I think giving a scope of a project in a couple sentences versus. Having it mentioned in March and then again, oh, there was another meeting in June and July, et cetera. So I think that's where I'm trying to streamline some of this, but in terms of. Versus looking at strategic tasks.
And I guess it doesn't have to be a meeting.
No,
It
no,
would just be, you know, Tyler and I working with, yeah, that's,
yes,
I think I'm maybe looking at the minutia more than I meant to say. I know,
but I do understand that.
big picture,
So
Yeah.
when we were drafting this, we did have a section that was like looking forward.
yeah,
And I think that's the concept that we don't want to lose. So
Yeah.
those, thinking about working with the COD art group over the summer, like that would be a looking forward, here's the
Yeah.
seed planted for this longer term project. I think that would be a good application for those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I don't want to lose sight of those things. And we're also trying to be attentive to making sure to give credit where credit is due. So when it is the staff members work towards a program or other event or initiative, we want to make sure that we're trying to identify them. Where it's gonna get a little bit tricky is, you're gonna learn a lot of position titles. Because we can't just say Kate Hoadley, blah, 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 because we're like, but I don't remember who that is specifically, there's 70 employees. So we'll start having job titles included as well, so. We'll see how it goes. We do have some plans here, but I hope that it reads better and is a little bit more. To the point. Even though I wasn't just then.
Okay, library activity report, any questions? Okay. All right, with there said, we have gotten through the agenda. Now a motion to adjourn.
I make motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Very good.